Okay, now let's continue. The next aspect of this is a little bit different because what I'd like you to do is actually just cut out the flag itself without the blue background. So in order to do that, we're going to actually go to the Canadian flag and we're going to do a Command 0 to practice these selection techniques. Okay, and so this is all about selection at this point. And what selection is just choosing something out of a photograph. So to start, we're going to do what's called a freehand selection using the Lasso tool. So if you go over here and click the Lasso tool, we're just going to draw around the Canadian flag and then cut it out. So if we do a rough selection, now I'm going to do a fairly rough selection here, and you'll see what I mean. We're going to do a rough selection so I can show you how to do a refinement selection. I'm going to cut this right out so I can show you how to do a really good add. And then back down, and then you just keep on holding the mouse button down until you get to near the end, and then it closes off. Now it's a very rough selection. So what we'd like to do is we're going to add a selection in here, and we're going to subtract some of the selection in here. Now to do a really good selection, what you want to do is zoom in. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hit the space bar and the command and zoom right into the ball here. And to do a really good selection here, I am going to subtract some of this here. I don't need this blue. And the way you subtract is you hold down the Option key. And you notice when you hold down the Option key, you get a little minus sign beside the Lasso tool. And so what I can do is if I just sort of scoop around here and cut out, I literally can cut out sections like this. Now obviously a really good way to cut out would just to be to go right along the edge like this and just cut out like that. Okay, and the same thing right along the edge and cut out like this. And so you see how I'm looping back into the blue spot. Whenever you're doing a subtraction, that's what you do. Okay, so, and as you notice, since I'm in so close, zoomed in so much, the refinement of the selection is significantly better, because I can actually use a much larger arc to do the selection. So as I'm going through like this. So that is a subtraction. Now I want to show you an add. And the way you do an add would be to hold down the Shift key. So if I hold down the Shift key, you notice that I get a plus sign beside the Lasso tool. And what I would do is I would go along here, and this is obviously, since I'm zoomed out, it's not quite as good as the zoomed in portion, but if I hold down the mouse button like this, doing a fairly rough job here, around, and then I'm going to scoop in, okay, like that. So if I ever wanted to add to something, I literally would scoop like this, and then I would go back in like this to get it. Now I'll go back in history because that was actually awful to do that little bubble thing. Okay, but that gives you an idea how you would do a selection. Now obviously it would take a long time to get a decent selection of the flag doing it this way. So there are better tools to use, and right now we're just going to deselect and we're going to try a different tool. In this case we're going to use what's called the Polygon Lasso tool. And I'm just going to show you that just so you can see what it's like if you have very angular objects like this flagpole. So I'm going to click here and then I'm going to let go of the mouse button. You notice that I've anchored that point here. And now I could go up here like this, and wherever there's a vertice like this, I could click, 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 and you notice I'm going on the inside so I don't get the blue on the inside here. Click, 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 go to here, click, and you notice, watch what happens when I get close to the beginning. See the little circle that forms there? So I'll go back, and then the little circle. The little circle means I'm in proximity of the beginning. If I click once, it'll reattach. Okay, and there we go. And so the Polygon Lasso tool actually works very well if you have very straight lines. Okay? However, most of our objects don't always have straight lines, so there are other tools you can use. So I'm going to deselect this, I can go down to the next one, and this one's called the magnetic lasso tool. Now this one's very interesting, can be used very effectively. What it does is it sticks to what's called a line of contrast. A line of contrast would be a change of color. Like this would be considered a line. So I'm going to show you how this works. If I click once and then just start dragging, it will stick to this line of contrast. And you have to be very careful when you've got a higher line of contrast close by, which is the white with the gray. Because if I accidentally scoop into there, I will lose it. See, just like that. Okay, and if you ever do get to a point where you want to click, you can click and it'll actually force the click around. Now this one is a very easy line of contrast because it's all gold. Okay, and I'm going to click there at the round part, click there, and just keep on going like this. And I'm clicking every so often just because it's habit forming for me. Oh, and see how it jumped back there? I'm going to click here, go across, oop. Well, it really likes that down there because it's such a high line of contrast. Okay, now we drag along here. Okay, and along here. And as long as you're dragging at a good rate, and you're staying really close to the line of contrast, you're actually going to get quite a good selection. Okay, and again, there's always an appropriate time to use the different selection tools. And in this particular case, this is not a bad choice for, and you notice I've jumped again, which I could fix. And again, you see the circle form as you get near the beginning, and I click OK. And now you've got a few errors that you'd have to adjust here, but generally look at how close this is along the edge, and especially around the circle. Saves you a ton of time in the selection process. Now you think, wow, this is the best tool we've seen yet. Absolutely it is. Now, however, you have to assess each photograph to determine which is the best tool. In this particular case, this isn't the best tool. So we're going to deselect, and we're going to go to the magic wand tool. Now the magic wand tool, what it does is it literally clicks on an area that is the same color. And you notice up here we have a tolerance. Tolerance means at 32, that means it's going to have about 16 shades of blue that are lighter and darker if I click in the blue section, which is covering the area that I want to get rid of. Now there's this thing called contiguous, and I'm going to check that on so you can see what that means. Now I'm going to click in here, and you notice the selection that it makes. I got a few little dots here, but it selected almost all of the blue, which is really very useful for me, except it didn't hit this area. That's because it's not touching the rest of the blue that I touched, and that's what the contiguous means. Only hit the ones that are touching. In this case, I want to get all of the blue, not just the part that is touching the blue that I click. So I'm going to click off again, and I'm going to try again. Now you notice that this is selected. Now I'm still getting all these sparklies here, I call them, so I'm just going to click around to get a shade of blue that works. And if you're wondering why this is happening, I'm just going to zoom in quickly here in a very small patch. And you notice there's a ton of different shades of blue in here. Okay, and that's why I'm getting all different selections. So what you do is, in this case, you just click around until you get a really good selection like this one. You notice the only sparkly I've got here is right here, and if I want to add that in, I could literally just go to the lasso tool, hold down the shift key to add, circle around it, and now I've added it in. Now the beauty of this is you're sitting there wondering, well, why is this any good? You've selected the blue. Well, all I have to do is go to select inverse, and now I have just the flag selected. And that's how you do a great selection. And now remember what the original objective was to bring this into the film strip. So I'm just going to arrange this again in a tile. Okay, and although this is larger right now, I'm just going to do an edit copy. And then go back to my film strip and do an edit paste. Okay, and you're going to notice here it is right down here. So I'm going to click back onto the Move tool, and then I'm going to go Edit Transform Scale, and then I'm just going to hold the Shift key down and shrink it in. And I'm going to bring this back up here, shrink it in, and then put it right in here. I'll use the arrow keys to get it into the corner, and then shrink it up. And there we go, and hit enter. Okay, and then all we're going to do now is do the exact same thing with the milk crate. And so again, it's got a white background, so I'm just going to click the magic wand tool, click into here, click on the white background, and it actually beautifully selects it. And so then I'm going to go select, inverse, and now I've just got the milk crate, edit copy, and then go back to this one, edit paste. Okay, and then I'm just going to move it over and adjust the size. So I'm going to move it over to here. Now since I've cut this one out, to adjust the size is going to be a bit more of a challenge. So Command T, hold down the Shift key, and I want to make it the exact same size as the other one. Now if you really want to make it the exact same size, you can actually put it right over top, adjust the size till it's exactly the same size, and I would recommend you do that. Okay, and let's move it over a bit. Right now, for now, because the video is getting long, I'm just going to do this. Hit enter. And it's a little bit smaller, but that's okay. And then we're just about done. Now, the whole idea of this wasn't to do the collage. Well, it was to do the collage, but to understand the layers that have been involved here. So if I want to move this right now, I can move this, but how do I go about moving the flag? Because even though I'm grabbing the flag, this is moving here. Well, that's because this is the milk crate here, and I am on milk crate only. Oops, only. Where's that N gone? Okay, now if I actually want to get to this flag, I'd have to click on the layer that the flag is actually on, which is this one. Okay, and now I could move it around. Okay, and that is flag only. And you notice that I'm naming these layers as I go. It's actually very important to name layers. Now to get to this layer, you just click down here. Double click here, and I'll just put milk crate. And then the next layer is flag. And then the last layer of the ones that are on top is mountain meadow. Okay, and what that does is it gives you control over the various layers. So if I wanted to move the flag, I could click on the flag and then I could start moving it however I wanted to. Anyway, that gives you an idea how layers works and a really interesting way of doing various selections.